Yesterday, I shared with you the comments of Donald Trump. He was appearing on the O'Reilly Factor, so that would have been Wednesday night, and Trump was reflecting on the debate the Democrats had on CNN. Trump still leading the pack among Republicans who'd like to be the next president of the United States in polling numbers, depending on who you read. This morning, Peggy Noonan says Trump has plateaued and will fade. This morning, Byron York says Trump is solidifying his lead. Pick one, right? 7 minutes after 9 o'clock, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 46. Bill O'Reilly he was incredulous. He kept saying, you don't really believe that CNN would rig a debate, do you? You don't really believe that CNN would rig a debate. Well, yesterday, Jim Webb, former U.S. Senator from Virginia, a decorated Marine, former U.S. Navy Secretary, Jim Webb was appearing at the Council on Foreign Relations, and in an hour-long conversation on the stage, actually broke off for a couple of minutes and talked about the debate he had been involved with, and he is echoing Donald Trump's criticism of CNN.
Karl Rove this morning characterized the different people in the debate, and he called me Mr. Angry. And I would say, it was either the option in that debate, which was, I'm going to be very frank, it was rigged in terms of who was going to get the time on the floor by the way that Anderson Cooper was selecting people to supposedly respond to something someone else said. I even turned around to Bernie Sanders at one point and said, Bernie, say my name, will you? Say my name. So, in that kind of an environment, I was either going to be Mr. Angry or I was going to be a potted plant. It was the only way to try to get into the conversation. And it's very difficult to win a debate when you don't have the opportunity to speak.
Last night, I got an email from a friend of mine, and he's been reading through some of the details on the TPP. That is that Pacific trade deal that, in fact, even a great many of your U.S. senators voted for, both from Idaho, if we could note that. And they did that because they believe we can sell a lot of potatoes in other parts of the world, but some people are warning that the TPP, not just Bernie Sanders, but also Pat Buchanan on the right, is going to be bad for American workers. So my friend was reading through all of the details. He happened to see them online, and he was explaining to me that there are calls in this treaty that will eliminate your IP address. That is, when you're on the internet, instead of using the number code that you have, that you'll have to use your real name, because a lot of the countries we're dealing with, they don't have free and open governments. Think about Vietnam. That's one of the countries that's included in this trade deal. And he started reading through all of this, and there's going to be a great many liberties, especially when you're online or using the internet, that you're going to have to give up. Did you know? I mean, did Senators Crapo and Risch tell you that? Did President Barack Obama tell you that? Of course not. They didn't bring it up. And as I was reading what he was telling me, it struck me. We've been so worked up about these debates, which really aren't debates. They're forums. A debate is an entirely different thing. This does not in any way resemble Lincoln and Douglas. Let's make that clear. We've been so wrapped up in watching these things. First of all of the networks are bragging about the number of people who are tuning in. And Election Day is still 13 months away. We don't even have the Iowa caucuses until after New Year's. And the first primary is probably coming up in February. So why are all of these people suddenly watching all of these things? Because we've designed them to be entertainment. Sheryl Crow sang the national anthem before the debate the other night, or the forum. I was sitting there thinking, why is Sheryl Crow here? Because when Kennedy-Nixon debated, they didn't bring out Ethel Merman to belt out the national anthem. And when Jerry Ford was debating in 1976, they didn't have somebody come out, somebody walk out on stage, some well-known performer of the time, and belt out the national anthem. So it's all this entertainment. It's packaged like the Super Bowl. Lots of pretty lights, and they try to get candidates fighting with each other. CNN denied that was the goal, but they wouldn't do it anyway. Bernie Sanders kept, turning around trying to give Hillary a kiss every time he had the opportunity. And then if you go back to the Republican debates, well, Donald Trump is clearly entertainment. Now, I'm not saying that these candidates are part and party to all of this. I'm just saying that they're being packaged and used that way. And so we like what this person said, and we like the joke they made, and, wow, what a great closing statement, and ha-ha, wasn't that funny? And Ben Carson, when he was on stage talking about being a neurosurgeon and separating conjoined twins and brains, and saying that people in Washington had half a brain. and everyone cheered and applauded. It's like he jumped up in the numbers. But meanwhile, behind the scenes, look what's happening in our government. 12 minutes after 9 o'clock. Government is simply going about its business, and that is to disenfranchise you, essentially, ultimately, to take away your liberties. And I don't know if people are really recognizing any of this is going on. We're still involved in the fight between the so-called teams. And again, it is set up like a Super Bowl. And everyone's throwing punches, and those punches happen to be, or the play calling, whatever else it happens to be. It's really all about the verbal punches and the verbal bombs that are being thrown out there. I have a couple of other notes about all of this morning I wanted to share with you quickly. Fundraising. All of these candidates love to talk about the middle class. Not many talk about the little guy anymore. Well, Sanders is doing that, I suppose. But they don't generally, they give a little lip service to you while they're essentially working to serve their donors. This is from the Washington Examiner. Byron York, Bush and Rubio squabble while Trump runs away with it. Contributions to candidates. This is dollars and cents. Who's been doing the most fundraising? And he says, of the candidates who are raising money, the winner in the Republican Party is Ben Carson, who collected $20 million in the third quarter. After Carson and Jeb Bush, who raised $13.4 million, came Ted Cruz with $12.2, Carly Fiorina with $6.8, Rubio with $5.7. And Rubio and Bush are now sniping back and forth about who's raised more money and who has more money in order to campaign with. But the first place candidate is Donald Trump, and he's pretty much self-financed. He is in Iowa up by 17 points over Bush, who's number 2. In New Hampshire, he is up by 10 over Bush. In South Carolina, he is up by 25 over Rubio and 30 over Bush. In Nevada, Trump is up by 31 over Rubio and 32 over Bush. And over on, and by the way, all of these numbers, Carson's $20 million pales in comparison to the $28 million Hillary Clinton raked in. She is the candidate, my friends, of Wall Street. She is not the candidate of the little guy. She is not the candidate of the labor unions. She is the candidate of Wall Street, the Bilderbergers, Bohemian Grove. She is the candidate of the controllers, the 1%, if you will put it that way. And guess what? Bernie Sanders, the socialist, supposedly raked in $26 million. That didn't come from small-time donors. 9:14:47. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. 736-0300, our number, and we have a caller with us. You're up next. You're on the air.
Bill, we need to point out also that Hillary Clinton is the candidate for the DNC. Debbie Wasserman Schultz is protecting her in many ways, one being just having only 6 debates in comparison to 27 debates back when Obama was running against her.
And 6 debates, and they won't have one again for months.
No, and as Webb, it was obvious to me that this was a rigged, you call it what you want to, whatever word you want to use. It was set up to control the whole event to make Hillary look good. And it's so unfortunate. You just look one layer underneath that big onion called Hillary, and it is decayed. She is problem. She's a defective person.
There is a writer today at the New Yorker, and this fellow is apparently a liberal, but he says that right now they're getting a lot of heat from people because media, hands down, was saying, oh, Hillary Clinton was the big winner. His name is John Cassidy, but he said he's been getting all sorts of email and Twitter traffic saying, what are you talking about? Because all of the major focus groups and most of the polling data showed Bernie Sanders the winner. That is, regular people who were responding said Sanders was the clear-cut winner, but all of the mediatocracy is going around saying it was Hillary Clinton. In other words, they're closing ranks for their gal.
Yes, and that was my impression as I was asking myself. I like Bernie Sanders. I don't like what he's saying, but I believe the man's being honest about what he really believes. And look at the Ed Klein videos that are out there that has written several books about the Clintons, and he's an insider, and he knows it. And I think he's being fair, but they're defective people.
I think that's a very good way to put it. Thank you much for the call. Ed Klein, of course, not very popular with Bill Clinton because Klein, I think, was the writer of Primary Colors. It was called Anonymous at the time, but later it was revealed to be him. And Bill Clinton was not pleased at all that someone would write a book that perhaps shed some real light with fictional characters on what the Clintons really happen to be. You may remember that movie that followed the book with John Travolta playing the Clinton-like character, who was he was like Frank Underwood. He was as sleazy as Frank Underwood is in the TV show. What do they call that? I've just watched 3 seasons of it in the last couple of weeks. House of Cards. You're up next. It's 9:17. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And what's on your mind?
Yeah, I'm just wondering why all of a sudden the Democrat Party is worried about winners. I thought they were all about participation ribbons and stuff.
Everybody gets a trophy.
Yeah, I mean, all of a sudden now that they've got that Clinton up there, they're worried about who won and stuff. It just seems like more hypocrisy to me.
Yeah, I thank you much for the telephone call. I think it was all designed. I tend to agree with Webb and Trump. It was all designed as a showcase for Hillary Clinton. And as Webb said, I could have chosen to be the potted plant, which is what they wanted him to do. In other words, focus on Hillary and Bernie there to kind of like, make Hillary look like she's got some sort of token opposition. 9:18. Meanwhile, you always hear the left screaming about the Koch brothers, who are from Wichita, Kansas. I actually worked last year on a campaign in Michigan's U.S. Senate campaign for a political action committee that had some ties to the Koch brothers, and we took a lot of heat about that. Charles Koch was appearing on FNC's, that's Fox News Channel's, Kelley File last night and says he's been getting death threats from liberals who believes he has too much influence in politics.
I get a lot of death threats, but the way I look at it is I feel I have a moral obligation to do the best I can to make the country better for everybody. And that threatens certain people because they're going to have much less power. I want the power to go back to people making decisions over their own lives.
Koch, by the way, is not a conservative. He and his brother, they are libertarians. They are small government people. They want government off your back in all aspects. So they're portrayed by the left and the fellow travelers and media otherwise. But as he explained last night, the search for a good candidate in either party isn't easy.
I don't have a guy. I have these principles and what I'm trying to accomplish, and what we need, to me, is a candidate that will help change the trajectory of the country from all this wasteful, irresponsible spending that's heading us for a financial cliff, not just by the Democrats, but by the Republicans. The reason we tend to support Republicans is they're taking us toward the cliff at only 70 miles an hour, and the Democrats are taking us 100 miles an hour.
There you go. Hillary, meanwhile, is being financed by Goldman Sachs and all the big Wall Street players, the hedge fund managers, and the like. And you've got the Kochs who simply are looking for people to downsize government. Which one, to the average American, would you consider to be evil, and which one would you consider to be a good American? Just a thought. Want to share that. Of course, your good buddies in mainstream media want to keep that one fudged as well, too. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX. More on this subject coming up in just a couple of minutes. You heard a couple of notices there. Of course, there's the car wash going on tomorrow, Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and this is to assist a local woman who's been dealing with the illness. It's taking place at the corner of Falls Avenue, and it starts at noon tomorrow. Falls Avenue and Blue Lakes Boulevard, Magic Valley Electric being the sponsor. And then you heard Sarah Bedke's testimonial about surviving breast cancer. Well, just to remind people, if you'd like to make a donation to the Wellness Tree, which provides services to women who can't necessarily afford them when it comes to screenings and the like, and they get no government money. They do this simply because people in this community are charitable. You can go to our website, newsradio1310.com. You see that pink banner around the outside of the website this month, and you see the ribbons there. Well, you click on that. It'll give you details on how you can make a donation. And something like only $10 will help 100 women who pass through there. 924, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 47. Lots of people still out hunting. Good news. There were some people who actually got lost while they were hunting in Idaho over the last few days. And from what I've been reading, most of them came out of the woods just fine. In fact, you want to talk about a hardy group of people. Apparently, this state is filled with them. If you actually are coming home and, you've got something strapped to the hood and you're thinking you need someone to process that for you, you could give High Desert Meat Processing a telephone call where they do one animal at a time, and what you bring in is exactly what you're going to get back. Darren Van Horn, the owner of High Desert Meat Processing in Twin Falls, he has more than 30 years' experience in the meat business. He has a Facebook page as well. You can see the reviews of customers there. You can give High Desert Meat Processing a telephone call. The number is 734-9949. High Desert Meat does in-house smoking. Nothing gets shipped out. Specialty meats they produce as well. Jerky, pepperoni, salami, summer sausage, kielbasa, breakfast sausage, brats, Polish dogs, hot dogs, much more. USDA approved. Darren works closely with local beef growers and their programs to ensure quality meat. 734-9949. Talking a little bit about the disparity between Republicans and Democrats in the last few minutes of the last segment of the program, and how media treats it as if it's still, it's very, what I would call almost an infantile understanding of it, or at least they think you have that, and that's how they present it. Republicans mean to women, Republicans mean to minorities, Republicans greedy, Democrats good, Democrats loving, Democrats love everybody, even same-sex people, or will try. And yet we explain to you who's getting their money and where they're getting it from, and it tells you really who's the party of the robber barons. That would be the Democrats. And, perhaps both of them have a lot of robber baron influence, but the Democrats, their hands are just as dirty as everyone else's involved in this. Meanwhile, Dr. Ben Carson, known for his background as a medical doctor, making an appearance last night on television with Sean Hannity on the Fox News channel, offering what I would call an economic prescription. If you did not get a chance to hear this, I'll share it with you today.
What is your plan specifically to get these people back into the mainstream of society and contributing and prospering and succeeding and bringing their talents to fruition?
Well, we have to understand what are the forces that are keeping people down. We have the most powerful economic engine that the world has ever known, but it's very difficult for that engine to operate with so many regulations. It wasn't meant that the government would be into every aspect of our lives and controlling everything. They need to go back and read the Constitution. They need to read, my book, A More Perfect Union, and find out what the duties of the government are. But every one of those regulations cost us in terms of goods and services. But it hurts poor people and middle-class people much more than it does wealthy people. Quite frankly, Sean, you and I, if we go to the store and the box of detergent has gone up 30 cents, it doesn't affect us. But it affects someone who is poor, and affects a middle-class person who has a big shopping cart full of multiple things that have gone up 30 cents.
Today on the editorial pages of the Wall Street Journal, a fellow by the name of Andy Puzder is writing, and he's a guest editorialist, chief executive officer of CKE Restaurants. He's the co-author of Job Creation, How It Really Works and Why Government Doesn't Understand It. Most people would just say that they don't need a lot of government help. They just would like a decent job that can pay the bills. I think that we all have that attitude to some degree. I don't really believe that there are that many truly lazy people that would just prefer to, well, all right, other than a couple of uncles I had. But that was a long, long time ago. Well, one. This is coming from the Wall Street Journal, and he's complaining about President Barack Obama making a statement last week saying that American workers aren't getting ahead because union membership is way down. He writes, here's the reality. Wages and incomes for workers, this is from Mr. Puzder, are stagnant because there aren't enough jobs. It's a matter of supply and demand. When jobs are scarce and people are unemployed, wages and benefits decline. When the job market is strong and businesses must compete for workers, wages and benefits will improve. The solution then is more jobs, and he says this isn't rocket scientist. Well, somehow Barack Obama missed the class in rocket scientry as well, and also in economics, because he insists if we would have that $15 minimum wage and more labor unions. Remember the story, though, about the labor union in California that fought for the $15 minimum wage, and then when it was passed realized it couldn't afford it in its own offices, so it sought an exemption? Yep. That's what we're dealing with. Good for you, but not good for me. I also saw another story today that says all of this talk about real decline in real wages, which supposedly is down about $6,000 over the course of the last 20 years, doesn't include some other factors that might show Americans are still holding their ground. 9:30, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. 48. Hey, I've got more coming up. A couple of other things I want to touch on before the end of the program. One of the leading scientists really on the planet is saying that the president and his minions have it all wrong when it comes to global warming. And I've got to share that with you if I get an opportunity. And also a reflection on culture by Sheriff David Clark of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Hope to get to those things coming up. And a treatise on food stamps this morning as well, on how to cut their use.